Cold refuge.
Homage to all the Buddhas who are present in their glory at this assembly. Homage to the Dharma, which is present in its glory at this assembly. Homage to the Sangha, who is present in its glory at this assembly.
Repentance and renewal.
With great respect, we turn towards conquering our afflictions, offering our heartfelt words of repentance. We have lived in forgetfulness for a long time, as we have not had the opportunity to encounter the Dharma. We carry within us the seeds of doing harm, stealing, objectifying others, and intoxication and lying. Our habit energies have led us into suffering. We have made many mistakes out of unskillfulness. We have been blinded by our wrong perceptions for a very long time. Within us, a neglected garden is sown, containing the seeds of attachment, hatred, and ignorance. Our everyday deeds and words do damage. All these wrong actions are obstacles to our peace and joy. Let us begin anew. We see that we have been careless, straying from the path of mindfulness and meditation. We have stored up afflictions and ignorance, which have brought about so much opposition and sorrow. There are times we have been weary of life because we are so full of fear and anxiety. We have turned to resentment and hatred because we do not understand others. We may have tried to reason with each other, but we often turn to blame. Everyday suffering increases, making the rift between each other greater. There are days when we are unwilling to speak to each other, unwilling to look upon each other. We create beliefs which can last for a long time in obscure reality. Now we turn to the three jewels, the Buddha, our teacher, the Dharma, the path of practice, and the Sangha, the spiritual community. Sincerely recognizing our errors, we bow our heads. Our consciousness holds all the wholesome seeds, the seeds of love and understanding, and the seeds of peace and joy. Because we neglect to water them, these wholesome seeds do not sprout fresh and green. We continue to allow sorrow to overwhelm us until there is no light in our lives. When we chase after a distant happiness, life becomes but a shadow of the reality. Our minds are occupied by the past or worried about the future. We do not relate wisely to our anger. We take for granted the precious gift of life we have been given. We disregard true joy that is with us in every moment. As month follows month, we let ourselves sink deeper into sorrow. So now in the precious presence of the Buddha, fragrant with sandalwood incense and illuminated by golden candlelight, we recognize our errors and begin anew. With all our heart, we go for refuge in the Buddhas throughout the 10 directions, and all the Bodhisattvas and noble disciples. Very sincerely, we recognize the errors of our unskillful views. We vow to live an awakened life, to practice ahimsa and conscious breathing, and to study the teachings authentically transmitted. Diligently, we vow to live in mindfulness and practice meditation. We come back to live fully in the precious moment, present, to cultivate the wholesome seeds and make strong foundations of ahimsa and understanding. We vow to train ourselves in attention and concentration, practicing to look and understand deeply, to see the nature of all that is, to free ourselves the samsaric cycle of birth and death. We vow to learn to speak nonviolently, to listen deeply, to always act compassionately toward others, to cultivate and share joy, to help people abandon sorrow, and to respond with deep gratitude to the kindness of elders, mentors, and friends. With deep faith, we light up the incense of bodhicitta, our heart-mind. We ask the bodhisattvas to be our protectors on the wonderful path of practice. We vow to practice diligently, cultivating the fruits of this path.
Mantra of repentance.
Om Sabha Mocha Moji Sadaya Savaha. Om Sabha Mocha Moji Sadaya Sava. Om Salva Mocha Moji Sadaya Savaha.
Bowing in gratitude.
Offering light throughout the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion, Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened one, to whom we bow in gratitude. Cutting through ignorance, awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude. Working mindfully, working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude. Listening deeply, serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude. Fearless and persevering through realms of suffering and darkness, Kishtigarbha, the Bodhisattva of great aspiration, to whom we bow in gratitude. Seed of awakening and loving kindness in children and all beings, Maitreya, the Buddha to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude. Seeing the Buddha in everyone, Sadaparibhuta, the Bodhisattva of constant respect, to whom we bow in gratitude. Convener of the Sangha, the teacher, Mahakashyapa, to whom we bow in gratitude. Wise elder brother, the teacher, Shariputra, to whom we bow in gratitude. Showing love for parents, the teacher, Magdalgayana, to whom we bow in gratitude. Master of the Vinaya, the teacher, Upali, to whom we bow in gratitude. First Bhikshuni, Mahaprajapati, to whom we bow in gratitude. Showing the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. So some of you don't have this on the program, but I'm going to give a Dharma talk. So this is a story that comes from chapter 8 of the Lotus Sutra, oftentimes known as the parable of the jewel in the robe. So I'm going to share the story first, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we can take away from the story. There was a man who went to the house of a good friend. After drinking some wine, he became drunk and lay down to sleep. Very early the next morning, the friend had to go out on official business. He tried to wake the man, but he slept too soundly and could not be roused. He wished to give him a gift, but was uncertain where to place it. So before leaving, he took a priceless jewel and sewed it into the lining of the sleeping friend's robe. When the man finally awoke, he set out on a journey and wandered through other countries. He was not a man of means like his friend, and he experienced tremendous difficulties in his search for food and clothing. He expended a great deal of effort to make do with what little he could come by. Sometime later, the wandering man was able to meet again with his close friend. The friend said to him, "My friend, why should you undergo these hardships to obtain food and clothing? In the past, I wanted to ensure that you would be able to live in comfort. So I took a priceless jewel, valuable enough to satisfy every desire, and sewed it into the lining of your robe. It must still be there in the lining of your robe, and yet you never sought to look within it. Instead, you have worn yourself out trying to provide a living only to live a life of hardship. How silly. Your spirit is as worn, and you have undergone such difficulties. You have become satisfied with only the most meager of comforts. The man took off his worn and tattered robe, searched, and sure enough, found the jewel still there within the lining. My friend, you must take this jewel and exchange it for necessary goods. You can have whatever you wish, and you will never again experience poverty or want. So, what is this precious jewel? We know Buddha would not be teaching about coveting and celebrating material riches. So there's got to be a different understanding of the story than just material goods. So what is the precious jewel? Well, the first thing for all of us to understand is that we all possess this jewel. It's the jewel of our Buddha nature. Our essential nature, our don't know mind, is that jewel. And we carry it with us, unknown, but always accessible. This jewel is hidden by our own ignorance, and as a result, we suffer. We go about the world seeking things outside of us to satisfy, only to find that we need to keep searching and searching, because nothing really satisfies, at least not for very long. It's only when we look inside that we find what we've been searching for. It's not something far off that we need to reach for, but our own original mind, our Buddha nature that has been with us all along. This parable teaches the importance of looking within, of self-reflection. Zen practice is the practice of coming to know our original mind, this Buddha nature, which is obscured by the ego. Buddha nature is like the sun. It always shines, even when it's not visible and covered by clouds. These clouds, think of them as the clouds of lust, greed, attachment, fear, anger, pride, envy, ignorance, hatred, delusion. It also teaches us that our perceptions create our reality. If you believe the world is a horrible place where nothing works out, that will be your experience. If you believe that people are hostile, evil, wrong, misformed, or insane, that will be your experience. Our inner life state is reflected perfectly in the outer world. If we are in hell, we will attract other hellish people. Those who enjoy life typically find themselves with others who do so as well. Like attracts like. So complainers constantly find themselves in a pickle with others who love to bitch. People who bathe in sadness attract others who will reflect their darkness and tears right back at them. As we practice, we might be wondering, what the hell is wrong with me? Why am I such a loser? Why can't I break through all this? What we don't realize is that we're trapped in a hell of our own thinking. We don't realize that in order for things in our life to change, we need to change our view. The thing is, struggle and suffering are part of life. But even suffering, even hell, even anger can be catalysts for change. We can be inspired to take a leap of faith and see through new eyes at any time. Nothing external needs to change for us to be happy. All that needs to happen is for us to realize that we can be happy no matter what has happened. Problems are not an indicator something is wrong with us. Problems are inherent in life. Problems are a part of the whole shebang. Resisting them or feeling that we have been singled out to suffer when no one else has to is the false, deluded thinking. It all causes more suffering. When we master our minds, the whole world changes. Meditation is the tool that we use to master our minds and clear away these clouds of delusion to reveal our Buddha nature. Meditation is seeing clearly. It's self-reflection. It's this ability to look inward that allows us to become aware of the many unwholesome and unskillful thoughts we possess. Through self-reflection, we learn of our weaknesses in order to address them and get at the roots of their causes. Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Meditation is a practice of purifying and perfecting our minds. Thich Thien An, the Vietnamese Zen master, compared our minds like a room. If you burn incense in it and keep it clean, it will be fresh and pure. If you ignore it and let garbage to accumulate, it will become foul and putrid. It is up to us to determine how to keep our minds. Wei Nang, the sixth patriarch of Zen, says, confused by thoughts, we just experience the duality of life. Unencumbered by thoughts, the awakened see the one reality. When looking within, it says when looking within, we must learn to be self-critical in a healthy and balanced way, not become righteous and self-important. It's difficult to look inward and notice our weaknesses and faults. But on the other hand, we can often find it easier to notice and focus on the faults of others. The Buddha said, let not one seek others' faults, things left done and undone by others, but one's own deeds done and undone. I remember Sung San talking about the reason we come together to practice is to learn how our own minds check others and to notice that when we start paying attention to what other people are doing, it's a sign that we need to be paying attention to what we're doing. And what better place to notice our habits of doing that, but with a practicing group community. Instead of focusing on the faults of others, it's best to attend to our own minds and make sure that they are pure. We are not perfect, so how can we expect others to be more perfect than we are? Often, when we notice the faults of another, it can be a cue to look inward. People often are mirrors to our own shortcomings. For example, that other person's impatience that gets under our skin just might be pointing out our own lack of patience. In fact, I lived with two people who did not get along with each other. And they were just so adamant that, the other person was, wrong, and it was their fault for the animosity that was brewing between them. But being on the outside and seeing these two, I just remember commenting, and I one time made the mistake of telling them that they were both exactly the same. And that I saw the thing that they would get mad about the other person were things that I saw the other person did, and vice versa. But when I pointed out that there's you both are just getting mad at each other because you see each other in the other, they're like, you're crazy, no way, there's no way I'm like that person. But that's what we do all the time. So, when you see that person who's annoying you, the first thing I would do is check, okay, what am I seeing in that person that I don't like about myself? And so that's how, in our practice, where we talk about meeting the teachers that appear before us, that's an example of what that means. That person annoying us is our teacher in that moment. The parable of the jewel in the robe also points out how we suffer needlessly. Wandering about, sometimes stumbling and fumbling, seeking some escape from suffering that we create ourselves because we do not realize that our essential nature is whole and free from suffering. We suffer because we don't believe we're capable of awakening. We suffer because we delude ourselves with thoughts, ideas, and concepts. This parable demonstrates how blind we can be to the whole process, the beauty and the limitlessness of our essential nature. Instead of looking inward, we look outward, believing that our thoughts are real, that what we think is who we are, and at the same time reject the truth that at our very core, we possess a priceless jewel. St. Francis Assisi said, "The one you are looking for is the one who is looking." Our thoughts and ideas make our reality. If you believe that the world is terrible, that is the only hardship and essentially that it's all hardship and essentially unfair. If you believe that people are by nature bad, greedy, or cruel, then this is how you will create your experience. What we believe will be confirmed by what we experience. An unhappy mind will seek out experiences to reaffirm and uphold an unhappy life experience. A contented mind will find contentment in the outer world. No amount of outward effort will change our experience if we don't first look within. I knew of practitioners who had devotedly attended temple for 9, 10 years, and yet they were still stuck on issues that had originally brought them to practice. When we find ourselves circling again and again around the same or similar types of problems, we keep trying to change the external factors, but refuse to accept that we are trapped by our own mind. In order for our lives to change, we need to look inward and wake up to our essential nature. Struggling and pain will always be a part of life, but we have a choice about suffering. When we look inward and begin to touch the light of that shimmering jewel inside, we will learn to see reality clearly just as it is, not through the lens of our ego or through our beliefs, ideas, and concepts. When we hold the jewel, we will come to realize that peace and contentment has nothing to do with what is happening outside of us. When we hold the jewel, we understand that our essential nature is peace and contentment. Then we will be rich beyond compare, wanting for nothing. So I want to add just, I've heard a lot of talk, and I admit, even my thoughts have run to the idea of like, thank God 2021 is over. Now we're going to, let's make 2022 be the year where everything is good. And admittedly, 2021 was hard. There were a lot of things that were really difficult. But the truth is that we have to be careful about holding that mindset, because already 2 days in, I've heard people complaining about how 2022 is not starting the way they wanted it to. And thinking like that is not going to make any change in one's life. In fact, it'll do the opposite. It will then just train the mind to continue to seek more and more things to qualify as 2022 as a bust. And there was a little bit of chatter on our Facebook the last few days. There's a lot of stuff people are suffering and struggling with, and I'm glad that we have that forum to share when we are struggling, to reach out and get some support from the community. But what I started to see was a pile-on, where one person posted something and then another person added to the group their own suffering and so on. And I started to feel a little concerned about the flavor of the group and that message group turning into a place where we just dump our suffering. And the group is a place also to share our celebrations and joys. That suffering and joy are not mutually exclusive, and in fact, we need positive stories and sharing celebrations to help us when we are having a difficult time. So I was glad to see, I don't know that started it, but that there was a video chat that was started in the group, and I couldn't join because I was driving at the time, but I was glad to see that you all connected in that way. And I just wanted to, share my appreciation for you all coming together and connecting and celebrating together, so that just the action of doing that becomes a joyful, positive, healing action to address all of the suffering that each of us are going through. We're all suffering, we all are have challenges. And the important thing to remember too is that 2021 turning into 2022, that's a made up thing. It's a calendar that people made. They actually have no significance whatsoever in the truth. So this idea that from one moment we're going to get rid of the bad stuff, and the next moment, because the calendar says so, we're going to embrace all the good stuff. Let's remember that we can do that every moment. We don't have to wait for a calendar to tell us when to do it. If we realize, okay, you know what? My mind has been going down the path of unwholesome seeds. I realize that now. So this moment, I'm going to cultivate the wholesome seeds. And then 2 minutes later, when you realize, oops, I started cultivating the unwholesome seeds again. That moment you can go, I'm going to cultivate the wholesome seeds. We can do that over and over. That's the wonderful thing about the present moment. We don't have to wait for a calendar. We don't have to go, oh, now we got 12 more months of hell before we can try again. No, let's not do that, because we can change how we connect to this moment right now. So hopefully this ceremony today is just a reminder that we can do this whenever we need to. So don't wait for another year. We'll do it every year, just as a reminder that we could do it anytime. So please try to cultivate those wholesome seeds as much as you can. Recognize when we're cultivating the unwholesome seeds. And then breathe and embrace the moment. And then water, sun, repeat. So let's have a few minutes of sitting meditation before we close the ceremony with some chanting and their reciting the vows. Do you want to just ring the bell?
Thank you. Chanting to Avalokiteshvara. The four great vows.
Sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them all. Delusions are endless, I vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite, I vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable, I vow to realize it.
Offering of merit.
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share these benefits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. May we in this life find awakening, and together all become Buddhas. Well, that concludes our New Year service. Thank you all for participating. I hope that you take the message of the service to heart and look at every moment as a new year moment.